All right, quick context before we really get into this. This deep dive, it's not about being picky. It's not about turning customers away. And it's definitely not about arrogance. This is about one thing, really. Clarity before commitment. See, over time, what really kills your margin, your energy, your close rate, it isn't bad customers. They're bad moments.
Hmm.
The free inspections, the vague site visits, the bids you write when nobody is actually ready to make a decision.
Wasted time, just completely wasted.
Exactly. So the idea here is, it's simple. We only show up when a real decision is possible. And that means we have to ask better questions up front, not more questions, just better ones.
The right ones.
The right ones. We're not trying to pressure anyone. We're just trying to make sure our time and theirs is used at the right stage. And when we do that, the visits are cleaner, the bids get approved faster, and trust actually goes up, not down. So what you're about to hear is the framework for how to qualify leads differently based on that relationship.
Yeah.
Whether it's a brand new lead, a customer who kind of shops around, or a long-term client who already trusts you. Same principles, just a different tone.
Right.
The goal is simple. If there's no decision, we don't force the moment. And when there is a decision, well, we show up prepared to help them make it. Let's get into it.
That core message you just laid out, clarity before commitment, I mean, that's the absolute foundation for what we're diving into today.
It's the whole game.
It is. This isn't just, a collection of aspirational sales tips.
Right, not feel-good stuff.
No, not at all. What we have in front of us is, well, it's essentially a high-ticket revenue manual. It's a complete structured framework, a full-on standard operating procedure for implementing this decision-driven bidding mindset.
So we're talking about building actual scaffolding, like an institutional system. This whole thing isn't designed to judge people, but to filter the situations they bring to you.
That's the key distinction.
You're filtering for readiness, for intent, and for authority.
Exactly. And the immediate tangible value for you, for the listener, is just being able to reclaim your most expensive resource, which is your expert time.
Of course.
I mean, if you're involved in high-ticket B2B sales or some kind of specialized service, you know that soul-crushing feeling. You drive an hour, you do this detailed inspection, you write a 10-page proposal.
And then crickets. Or worse.
Or worse, you find out the client was just curious. Or that the key decision maker never even saw the document.
Right.
This manual, this framework, it gives you the structure to stop that energy hemorrhage. It's really the ultimate guide to making sure that when you do commit your resources, it's highly leveraged, highly likely to close, and profitable.
It operationalizes that belief that, hey, my time is valuable, and I only use it to solve real problems for people who are ready to take action.
That's it.
And that immediately hits on a massive pain point. We've all had that, like Sunday night dread, right?
Oh, yeah.
You look at your calendar and you have 3 vague site visits scheduled for Monday morning, and you have no idea who the decision maker is.
You're just hoping for the best.
Yeah. And this framework is supposed to completely eliminate that dread.
Okay, so let's unpack this core philosophy because, like you said, it's designed to be intentionally rigid. The documentation we've been looking at is absolutely clear about the boundaries you have to set. If you want to protect your margin and, your professional authority, there are these 4 non-negotiable rules.
Yeah, and you can think of them as professional boundary markers. They define what you are, but maybe more importantly, what you are not willing to do for free. Okay, let's list them out and talk about the implications. The first rule. We do not visit to look. That sounds so obvious. But how many times do people break that rule out of, a fear of missing out on a potential sale?
Constantly. It happens all the time. Visiting to look is the very definition of a curiosity inspection. It lets the client just consume your expertise.
For free.
For free, with no commitment in return. And the second rule just reinforces this. We do not bid to educate.
Say more about that. Bidding to educate.
Well, education can be a great byproduct of a transaction, but if your bid is basically a teaching tool, the client has already gotten what they wanted before they even signed the contract.
You've given away the game plan.
Like you've given away the entire game player.
Okay, and the third one. We do not diagnose without intent.
Right. If they aren't willing to follow through on a recommendation, why should you spend your valuable mental energy diagnosing a complex, high-ticket problem?
It's a waste.
It's a total waste. And finally, the rule that just wraps it all up. We only engage when a real decision is possible.
And that feeds directly into the critical filtering system.
So it's just,
No
this
decision
leads to no visit. And no visit.
automatically means no bid.
If you break that chain, You're just right back in the business of providing free, high-value consulting.
And you're undermining your entire revenue structure.
I do worry, though, that to an outsider, this whole no bid, no visit system, it can sound arrogant.
It can.
It sounds like you're saying, my company is too good for your small job. What does the manual say about that perception? How do you clarify what this actually means?
That's a crucial point, and the manual is actually very sensitive to that. It states explicitly that this is not about ego. It is not about avoiding smaller jobs. It's just strategic protection of your value.
So you're protecting your time, your authority, and your close rate.
Exactly, your close rate.
Okay, but why does providing free consulting harm the close rate specifically?
Because it completely shifts the client's perception of your value. You go from being an essential partner to a commodity vendor.
Think about it. If I give you the diagnosis, the scope, the risk profile, and the solution all for free, you now have a perfect blueprint.
And I can take that blueprint to 3 cheaper, less experienced vendors.
And just say, can you do this for less?
Wow.
You've just become the free research department for your competitors.
So the strategy has to be crystal clear.
It is. We refuse to provide free consulting, and we refuse to inspect curiosity.
That is a phenomenal distinction. Free education versus real engagement. And that leads right into this fundamental shift in your role that the sources talk about. If you stop doing the free consulting, who are you now in the eyes of the client?
Yeah.
You're not just a technician or an inspector or a second opinion anymore.
No, you have to ascend to a high-value advisory position. The manual describes this new identity in 3 distinct parts. You are a risk interpreter, you are a future failure translator, and you are a decision simplifier.
Okay, I love that. Let's focus on future failure translator. What does that mean in practice?
It means your primary job isn't just to give an estimate for the immediate need. It's to interpret the structural risk of inaction.
Okay, give me an example.
So a property manager calls about a specific small leak. The technician is trained to just fix the leak.
Right.
The risk interpreter is trained to assess if that leak is a symptom of a much bigger aging system, to identify what will fail next, the pump, the main filter, the controller, and then translate the consequence of that future failure into terms the client actually understands.
So facility downtime, regulatory fines, emergency after-hours costs.
Exactly. Your goal isn't just technical compliance, it's liability management.
That is a huge shift.
It's everything. Your job is to help the key decision makers, the owners, the board, the capital planning committee answer one single crucial question. What should I approve now so this doesn't become my problem later?
So you're moving the whole conversation from how much does this cost to how much risk does this remove?
Precisely. You reframe the entire interaction from transactional to strategic.
And this concept is so important that the source material includes this foundational doctrine that anchors the whole approach. It's a great quote to just burn into your brain.
Which one is that?
If they can't explain the decision, they can't approve the work.
That quote is pure gold. I love that. It just shifts the burden of clarity right back onto the client before you commit a single resource.
Yeah.
If they can't articulate what decision they need to make, is it repair versus replacement? Is it timing? Is it budget allocation? They are simply not ready for you to write a bid.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the internal doctrine quotes these short, punchy mantras. They're designed to reinforce this whole high authority, low waste approach for the whole team. Let's dive into a few of those.
I love that they differentiate between filtering people and filtering situations. That mantra, we filter situations, not customers, is paramount because it takes the emotion out of it. It takes the potential conflict out of saying no. You're not saying you aren't valuable enough. You're saying your current situation isn't ready for a high-value engagement, so let's just sequence it for later.
It protects the relationship while enforcing the boundary.
Exactly.
Okay, and then there's the one that redefines your proposal. We don't bid to educate. We bid to resolve risk. We touched on this, but let's look at the contrast in the outcomes.
Okay, imagine 2 scenarios. Scenario A, you write a bid, lists 3 options, details all the technical specs, explains the pros and cons.
The educational bid.
The educational bit. The client learns a ton, they feel smart, and then they take your document to a competitor and save 15%.
In there.
We all have. Now, scenario B. You write a risk memo. It's focused only on the inevitable failure of their current system, and it presents one clear, defensible path that eliminates that risk. The client's motivation isn't to save 15% anymore. It's to avoid the 100% chance of future catastrophe that you just clearly articulated.
So you're no longer selling components. You're selling certainty.
You're selling sleep, essentially.
Yeah. And finally, the mission statement for any face-to-face meeting. We show up to help people decide not to look around.
That single statement is the professional elevator pitch for your high-ticket service. It kills tire kicking before it even starts by defining the purpose of your presence as decisional, not just exploratory.
And if the client kind of pushes back on that framing,
That's your first clear signal that they haven't passed the qualification gate in their own mind, even if they answered the questions correctly on the phone.
it's a powerful philosophy, but the rubber meets the road when we talk about execution.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you actually ask for that decision intent without sounding like you're interrogating them?
And that's the perfect transition.
It brings us to the mandatory gate that enforces all these rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on. If the philosophy is the bedrock, then the three-question CRM gate is the fortified entry point. This system, and it's mandatory for every new or vague lead, is the definitive line between a genuine lead that respects your time and an informational request that is just going to waste it.
And the documentation is so clear on this. This gate has to be run usually by the first person who handles the inbound request, whether it's a phone call or an email. This is where you operationalize that rule. No decision equals no visit.
And the whole thing relies on the strategic use of forced choices.
Completely.
Okay, let's detail these three mandatory questions. They're designed to leave absolutely no room for ambiguity. Question 1 is about decision intent, and it has to be a forced choice. You're forcing them into one of three acceptable lanes. You ask them, are you looking to 1, decide between repair versus replacement, 2, get real numbers for budgeting or capital planning, or 3, is this information only, meaning you're just gathering data?
And the rule is not flexible. If they choose information only, it is an automatic polite hold, no visit.
Just stop.
You stop the process, you've defined the 3 acceptable commitment lanes, and if they try to veer into that 4th non-action lane, you pause. You're giving them the respective choice, but only if they choose a lane that actually leads to a decision.
Okay, so question 2 moves from intent to like the operational reality of it, the approval path. You ask them, once they have a recommendation in numbers, who ultimately approves the work? And again, they have to choose. Is it me, the person on the phone? Is it ownership?
Yeah.
Or is it a board or a committee?
This is a genius filter. It immediately flushes out leads where the person calling you is just a functionary. They're operating without any internal authority.
Yeah.
If they can't name the approver, oh, it's just handled by someone up top, or if the approver is like 5 layers removed and has no idea this is even happening.
Oh, a huge red signal.
Massive.
Yeah.
So if they can't name the approver, there is no visit. If you spend hours on a bid only for it to be reviewed by someone you've never spoken to who has no context for the risk, you've just played the lottery with your time.
Right. And then finally, question 3, the readiness check. If this points to real work, what happens next? Again, 3 forced choices. We move forward immediately, we plan and budget it for a future date, or just gathering info.
And, predictably, the rule holds. If they say they're just gathering info, you hold the visit. The cumulative effect of these 3 questions, asked in order, clearly, it provides a shockingly accurate quality score for that engagement.
You're assessing the quality of the commitment before your expert even drives off your property.
Exactly.
Well, let's drill down on the psychology here. Why is using forced choices so much better than the typical open-ended questions most sales teams use?
The analysis in the manual is sharp. It says, fluff happens when people can hide. An open-ended question like, so tell me about your needs, just invites vague, polite, non-committal answers. The client doesn't want to shut a door, but they also don't want to commit.
So forced choices eliminate that hiding space.
Completely. By giving them defined lanes, A, B, or CU, you compel them to pick a direction, which requires an internal commitment they otherwise wouldn't have made.
But the delivery of these questions is key. You can't sound accusatory.
Oh, absolutely not.
The source material really emphasizes making it sound routine, almost administrative.
Yes, as if asking about the approval path is just standard procedure for any high-level service firm.
Right.
The phrasing is designed to be non-threatening, but still authoritative. For question 1, they suggest something like, for our process, we just need to know which bucket this falls into. Are we deciding repair versus replacement, setting real numbers for budgeting, or is this still early information only?
Using a word like bucket makes it more conversational.
It does, and for question 2, the phrasing has to normalize talking about authority. Once we have the proposal, is approval handled by you, ownership, or a board committee? It just sets the expectation that your proposals go to high-level decision makers, not entry-level staff.
You're setting the expectations for a high-value interaction right from the start. And there's that quote about conditioning the client, which is so powerful.
Which word?
If I let them answer vaguely, I train them to treat my time vaguely.
Oof. Yeah.
That means if you accept, I'm just curious, you've just taught them that your time is disposable.
Authority is constructed by the boundaries you enforce. This early qualification is the first and most critical boundary. It tells the client, without saying it, that your time is a resource, not a freebie.
Okay, now we get to the tactical language.
Eh.
The actual scripts designed to enforce this gate without creating friction. These are the words your team needs to have in their back pocket.
And the manual provides so much value here because it gives your front line the precise language to handle all the typical objections and evasions.
Let's start with the first response, the main qualification script. Before we schedule anything, I just want to make sure the visit is actually useful and productive for you. Are you looking to decide whether this is a repair or replacement, get real numbers for budgeting, or is this still early information only?
And the essential instruction that comes after that, which is often the hardest part for sales staff.
The silence.
The silence. If they hesitate, stop talking. Silence forces clarity. You present the three options, and then you just wait. The silence puts the pressure on the client to commit to an action path, not on you to fill the gap with offers of free service.
But they will try to evade it. They'll use the classic avoidance phrases, we just want to see what's going on, or we're just gathering options before the board meets next month. This is where the fluff detection script comes in.
And the response has to be delivered with calm authority and empathy. The manual prescribes. Totally understand. In those cases where it's still early information, we usually find it's better to wait until there's a decision actually ready to be made. Once you're looking to evaluate real options or budgeting paths, I'm happy to come out.
I worry that polite hold script could sound a little passive-aggressive or condescending, especially if the client is already a bit annoyed by the process. How do you coach someone to deliver that without creating friction?
That's a valid concern. The tone is absolutely everything. It has to be delivered as a professional recommendation, not a denial. The person delivering it should sound helpful, almost like they're protecting the client from a wasted interaction.
So the subtext is, I respect your time, so I don't want us to meet until we can actually accomplish something concrete.
Exactly. And critically, the distinction the source emphasizes is this. You did not say no. You said not yet. You're preserving the relationship for the moment they mature into a decision maker.
So the goal is always sequencing the engagement, not rejecting the service outright.
Correct. The official polite hold quote from the manual summarizes this perfectly. At this stage, it sounds like this is still informational. Once you're ready to evaluate real options or budgeting paths, I'm happy to come out. By using that kind of professional deferral, you preserve trust and your own authority. You're communicating that your expertise is a limited, valuable resource that's reserved for decision makers.
You immediately elevate yourself above the vendors who panic and just rush out the door for any vague requests.
That's the whole point.
So the big takeaway from this section is that this early enforcement is the key. It's how you minimize wasted resources. Once they pass this gate, you know you're driving out to a decision, not just a fact-finding mission. All right, so the lead passed the three-question gate. They named the approver, they committed to a decision path, they confirmed their readiness. Now the site visit is scheduled. But even the physical visit has this single, razor-sharp objective that goes way beyond just diagnosing the problem.
Right. The core site visit objective is not to inspect the immediate issue. It's to gather the precise information you need to write a risk memo, a document designed to trigger a decision. The manual mandates that every site visit has to answer 3 specific questions, and if the consultant leaves without definitive answers to these, they are instructed not to write a bid yet.
So it's like a final internal qualification check on site.
It is.
What are those 3 mandatory answers that have to be confirmed?
First, what will fail next? You have to look beyond the immediate problem and identify the cascading risk. Second, what happens if it fails on their timeline? This is the crucial risk translation part, quantifying the potential cost of delay in terms of the decision maker actually cares about.
Insurance, voidance, facility closure, emergency fees, that stuff.
That's the stuff. And third, what is the clean, defensible fix? You have to identify the single best path forward that eliminates the risk you just identified.
So if you leave the site only knowing the answer to what's broken right now, you haven't earned the right to write a bid under this system.
You haven't. And this is where that technical expertise transforms into revenue strategy. The source material provides a really detailed revenue-focused site visit checklist designed to make that risk interpreter role shine.
Okay, let's break it down.
Absolutely. The technician has to learn to think like a future failure translator. They're scanning the entire operational landscape for revenue opportunities that are disguised as inevitabilities. There are three main scan categories they mandate.
Yeah.
First is failure hotspots. These are the ticking time bombs that signal you should be talking about a replacement runway, not just a quick repair job. Look for aging equipment, especially anything 7 to 10 years or older. Look for physical stressors. Weird corrosion, unsupported pads that screen cheap installation, excessive vibration.
Repeated repairs.
Oh, repeated repairs is the big one. The source highlights that chronic flow or pressure issues or any evidence of multiple past patches all equal a replacement runway. If a client has repaired the same component 3 times, you shift the conversation from the third repair to the inevitability of replacement.
That's the difference between patching a flat tire and recognizing the tread is worn out on all 4.
Perfectly put. Next, you scan for compliance and liability. These are non-optional spending items. They justify an immediate decision regardless of the client's current budget cycle.
So for people not in this specific vertical, give some examples. Why are these so important?
Well, the sources give examples like non-VGBA compliant drain covers in pools, or missing SVRS components, or critical ADA non-compliance for access. They're important because they carry legal exposure that is far greater than the cost of the repair.
So it's about the lawsuit, not the part.
It's always about the lawsuit. Non-compliance often means the facility is operating illegally, or worse, their insurance could be voided if there's an accident. The source confirms. Compliance issues equal non-optional spending. You're not asking them to buy something. You're advising them to avoid a lawsuit or a forced facility shutdown. The urgency gets dialed way up.
Okay, and the third category leverages existing neglect. Deferred maintenance. This seems like the easiest capital conversation to have.
It is, because the client often already knows they've been neglecting the system. You're just identifying the self-imposed risk. You listen for phrases like, "We've been limping it along since I took over."
Right.
You look for hard-to-source parts that mean the next breakdown will cause huge downtime. Or equipment that's obviously operating way beyond its intended lifespan. Deferred maintenance doesn't equal a repair quote, it equals a capital conversation. You're just validating the need for the budget they've been avoiding for the last 2 fiscal years.
This whole systematic approach ensures that even if you go out for a tiny single-issue repair, you can come back to the office with a full risk profile that justifies a much larger decision-driven engagement. And while you're on site, your team has to be trained to listen for specific verbal cues, these phrases that signal opportunity and underlying risk.
Yes, these are verbal red flags that confirm the client is operating in a state of stress or confusion. When they say, "We just need it to last a little longer," they are explicitly admitting they are accepting undue risks.
They're telling on themselves.
They are. When they say, "It was like this when I got here," they're signaling a lack of institutional knowledge, confirming there could be hidden, inherited problems. And the biggest one, we don't have budget right now.
Which doesn't mean no money.
It never means no money. It means the risk has not been quantified clearly enough to justify emergency funding, or the person you're talking to isn't the final approver.
So all these phrases signal the same 3 things: unmitigated risk, impending future urgency, and a decision that has not yet been framed.
And your job is to frame it for them.
In the risk memo.
And to frame that decision effectively, the documentation process has to be selective. It has to be high impact. Section 9 outlines the strict documentation rule. Only document what supports a decision. That means focusing on age, wear, risk, non-compliance, and operational inefficiency. That's it.
I see the rule about not over-documenting, but in practice, how do you stop a technical team member who's used to showing everything they find? They believe more is better.
You train them on the outcome. You show them the warning from the manual. Do not over-document minor issues. Noise kills urgency.
Noise kills urgency. I like that.
It's so true. When an executive gets a 30-page report detailing 2 critical immediate risks and 28 pages of cosmetic scratches and normal wear, their brain naturally categorizes the whole document as low-priority noise. The volume of detail just dilutes the urgency of the actual liability.
So documentation needs to be surgical. A high-def close-up of the bleeding wound, not a panorama of the scenery.
That's a great way to put it.
So how does this focused documentation translate into the final document, the decision-ready bid structure? It's supposed to read like a risk memo, not a proposal.
Right. A risk memo is for the executive who has 5 minutes to decide whether to spend 50 grand or risk 500 grand. It has to be linear, concise, and focused on inevitability, not options. So first, the situation. Plain English, 1 or 2 sentences. What's the current status? What's the immediate symptom? Brief and factual.
Second, the most critical part, the risk. This needs to be expanded on. What happens if this is delayed?
This is where you translate the technical issue into business consequences. Delaying this will result in a minimum of 5 days of facility closure, or non-compliance risks immediate regulatory fines. This is where you justify the cost.
Okay. Third, the recommendation.
One clear, defensible path. No ambiguity. You are the expert. You're being paid to simplify the decision for them. You might include a single optional alternate, but it has to be clearly labeled as temporary, a stopgap, or a high-risk solution.
And finally, the close.
Calm, confident, no pressure. It just confirms the need for action based on the risk you identified. You don't ask for the business, you just state the next step. Upon approval, we will mobilize our team within 5 business days to mitigate the identified liability.
The comparison is so important. A proposal asks, would you like to buy this?
But a risk memo concludes, you must decide whether to mitigate this harm or accept this liability. This structure directly empowers the client to answer that core internal question we keep coming back to.
What should I approve now so this doesn't become my problem later?
Yeah.
We've covered the philosophy, the structure. Now we need to get into the relationship dynamics. This whole high authority, decision-driven system, it can't work without trust. The success really hinges on what the manual calls the trust loop.
This loop is the ethical engine that lets you confidently push back on those vague requests. If the client trusts you implicitly, they won't get annoyed when you tell them, not yet. They'll see it as valuable counsel.
So what are the rules of this trust loop?
They're simple, but they're hard to execute consistently. First, you have to say, this can wait, when it actually can. That demonstrates integrity. You have to warn early about developing issues, even if they're years away. You must never exaggerate the scope of a problem. And crucially, you have to always explain why, not just what the problem is.
Telling a client they don't need to spend money today seems so counterintuitive to sales, but the source makes a really strong case for it.
It creates institutional loyalty that goes way beyond price. The absolute truth the manual provides is this: trust shortens sales cycles more than discounts.
Say that again?
Trust shortens sales cycles more than discounts. A discount just signals desperation or that you have a lot of margin room. Trust signals a partnership. A reliable partner tells you to wait until the timing is right. A desperate vendor pressures you to buy today no matter what.
And that level of authority feeds into what they call the acceptance reframe. So when you do agree to go out, after they pass the 3 questions, you set the expectations immediately. And that acts as a final filter for any lingering tire kickers.
You're confirming the purpose of the visit before you even step on site. The pre-visit briefing should sound something like, great, I've got you on the calendar. Just to confirm my objective, I'll be there to determine whether the risk factors make this a repair, a replacement, or a capital planning issue.
So you're framing your arrival as an intervention to clarify a decision path, not just a casual look over. Okay, let's move to the most nuanced part of this whole system: applying that mandatory qualification gate to different customer types. The principle is the same questions, different tone.
But trust determines how tight you hold the gate, not the rules themselves.
So we need to analyze the 3 specific customer types and the required mode of interaction for each.
Right. And understand that the core clarity check is always mandatory. First up, the brand new lead a client with 0 history with you. The mode here has to be firm, structured, and protective. The singular goal is to eliminate tire kickers early, before they consume your valuable proposal time.
So this means strict, almost automated adherence to the 3-question order, right?
Yeah.
And your interpretation of their answers is intentionally harsh.
Absolutely. Any ambiguity means no visit yet. If they say information only, or if the approval authority is vague, they have not earned the visit. They're starting from a deficit of trust, so you have to rely completely on the structure.
And the expectation frame you use here is assertive, but still professional.
Right. You say something like, are you looking for a vendor to simply inspect this and give you numbers, or are you looking for a partner to help you decide what the optimal long-term resolution is? You're demanding they confirm their intent. Are you vendor shopping, or are you looking for a decision partner?
Okay. Next, we address the sometimes customer, the client who shops around. They know you, but you're still in a competitive comparison.
Here, the mode shifts to calm authority. You're not trying to chase them. You're trying to elevate yourself out of that commodity comparison set. The goal is a boundary reset. The questions focus less on their internal readiness, they probably know the approver, and more on their buying process.
So what does that boundary reset sound like in a dialogue?
You start by confirming intent. Are we talking repair versus replacement here, or is this primarily a budgeting conversation? And then you hit them with that subtle authority check, the boundary reset. Do you want help deciding on the definitive path forward, or are you just collecting multiple opinions to compare bids?
That is direct. I mean, that introduces friction into their shopping process. What if they admit, yes, we are collecting multiple opinions?
You pause, the manual says, if collecting, pause,
Mm-hmm.
then you reply. I understand the need to be diligent, but my time and expertise are focused on providing a definitive recommendation for decision makers. If we commit to this scope, are you committing to using our assessment to make the decision or just a cross-check against other quotes?
You're politely calling their bluff. If they're just price shopping, your high-value expertise is wasted.
They have to commit to using your expertise to decide, not just to leverage a lower bid from some other vendor.
That's how you start to decouple your value from price, by refusing to play the price war game based on your free diagnosis.
Precisely. And finally, we have the loyal, trusted customer. This is the relationship you've built over years by applying the trust loop.
Right.
The mode here is efficient, respectful, and light. The goal is speed and service, not filtering. You've earned the right to assume positive intent. You assume their request is tied to a real need.
So you don't need the rigid, highly structured force choices.
Not unless their request is unusually vague.
So how does the qualification process look for a trusted client? Do you still run the 3 checks?
You still confirm the clarity checks, but the tone is much more conversational. You just run a simple outcome check. So what decision are you trying to make here? Just fixing this, or are we planning for a larger replacement? And then a quick timing signal. Is this something you want to move on this quarter, or is this for budgeting next fiscal year?
No need for the intense who approves structure.
Not usually, unless you're dealing with a capital project that's way bigger than their usual spend. It's about being helpful and efficient, not administrative.
The sophistication here is really an understanding that trust is an accelerator. If trust is high, you can skip the friction, as long as you still get that core clarity. So let's summarize the internal rules that apply to all customer types, regardless of the nuance.
The gravity of the system has to hold. You never skip the clarity checks, even if you ask them conversationally. Decision clarity, approval clarity, and readiness clarity must always be confirmed. If a loyal client asks you to scope a $700,000 project and you don't know which board member approves it, you are risking an unacceptable amount of your time based on an assumption of trust.
Assumptions kill margin.
Always.
And we should revisit the specific scripts for these trusted scenarios.
The existing client trust version is great for efficiency. You just say, I'm happy to take a look immediately. Are we thinking repair versus replacement here? Or is this more of a capital planning conversation? It keeps the dialogue efficient, but it still forces them to commit to a scope direction, which lets you prioritize your resources correctly.
And the genius of the approach is the instruction that if a loyal client starts using vague phrases like, I just want someone to look, you immediately revert them back to the firm protective gate, no matter their history.
Exactly. The manual says, if they start acting like a new lead, you treat them like a new lead. If they use vague language like, ownership hasn't discussed it, or I have no budget, you immediately revert to the polite hold script. Trust is earned, and it has to be maintained through clarity.
The rule summarizes that adaptation perfectly.
Same questions, different tone. Trust determines how tight the gate is, not the rules.
So what we've covered today is a high-ticket sales system where clarity isn't just a nice to have. It is the currency of professionalism. The system isn't about rejection. It's about respect. Respect for your time and respect for the client's decision-making process.
It's about establishing professional authority from that very first interaction.
We have to internalize that ultimate one-line filter that summarizes the entire philosophy. It's perfect for training teams and reinforcing that internal discipline.
If there's no decision, there's nothing to bid. If there's nothing to bid, there's no reason to visit.
That's how you reclaim your calendar and your margins.
And that brings us to the final provocative thought for you to consider long after this deep dive is over. Think about how applying the structured qualification framework doesn't just protect your internal resources. It fundamentally changes the perception of your value in the marketplace.
Mhm.
When you only show up to facilitate a decision and you are willing to tell a potential client, no, not yet, you instantly move yourself from being a commodity vendor who provides free estimates to an essential risk manager whose time has to be earned.
You become scarce.
You become scarce, and scarcity implies value. This shift has profound implications for your business model. You're no longer selling based on price comparison. You are selling based on inevitable risk mitigation. So ask yourself, how might your entire pricing structure need to change, and how much higher can your margins go once you adopt the mindset that clarity creates urgency, not pressure? If your engagement starts with high clarity, you are selling certainty, and that always justifies a premium.
A shift from being a vendor chasing transactions to being an inevitable solution that controls the timing of engagement. That's a powerful thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into systems and clarity. Now, go explore your own source material and start asking those better questions. We'll catch you next time.